Hi, welcome back to a new video. So today I'm going to be talking about some of the behaviors, habits, and routines that I did when I had relative energy deficiency in sport, and that I sometimes fall back into now around underfueling, overtraining, chronic burnout, and overexertion, but that I thought were very normal. And it only took, I would really say, my friends and my family to point out that it wasn't normal. A massive part for me was I moved country quite a lot growing up. So I moved country 4 or 5 times, and all of those movements and instability meant that when I eventually moved to university in the US, I found the change really, really difficult. It was my first time sort of moving by myself. We always moved country with family, and so I'd moved by myself, and I found the change really difficult. And the thing about American culture is you all eat together, you all eat in the dining hall, and I found the dining hall really challenging because you are constantly surrounded by food and you're constantly surrounded by what other people are eating. For me, having relative energy deficiency in sport, I thought that not being able to eat around people was normal. It is definitely, definitely not. Food is something that isn't just about the the nutrients. It's a social thing. It's something that is to be enjoyed with friends and family, and being able to go out and, you know, have an impromptu hot dog or piece of cake, and that just was not possible at all. And I've always found it really difficult to see food as something that isn't just fuel for training, because growing up doing so much sport, all of the fuel was, oh, okay, eat more fuel because you're an athlete and you're doing more. But no one teaches you how to do that. No one teaches you how to fuel as an athlete, because you're around people who aren't training as athletes, and so you kind of start comparing how much you're eating to how much they're eating. And so for me, I couldn't go out and be around friends and family eating, because I'd just be spending so much time focused on what everyone else was eating that I really struggled to be present. And I used to actually have a lot of kind of spacing out. But what I mean by that is I'd like zone out of conversations, and literally just stare into space, because actually in my head I was thinking and calculating all of the things that I'd eaten that day, or I'd be thinking so much about what was on the menu that I was always the last person to decide what to eat on the table, and I'd always end up choosing something that inevitably I didn't enjoy because I'd chosen what I thought was better to have. Menus and restaurants were just a massive, huge issue, and then I'd always choose something going out, whether it was in the supermarket, whether it was going out with people. I'd either wait until I got back home to eat, because I knew that if I chose something, I either wouldn't want it, and I couldn't choose the choice that I actually wanted because of the, whatever was in it that I couldn't have. And a lot of the time it was, well, I'd rather just not eat anything at all or choose anything at all that I don't know might cause me mental overwhelm. The mental overwhelm part of relative energy deficiency in sport is just not talked about enough, but it is a constant mind game. And your body's not just drained, but your brain is so drained. And we don't talk about actually the impact that so much mental calculation has on the body itself. So for me, whenever I've had a day when I've really been talking a lot about relative energy deficiency in sport, my emotions behind food, the feelings behind it, and where those all come from in terms of like control and taking up space, and what I think or how I think I should look, and the kind of ideals and aesthetics, I'm exhausted, and my body feels it. My body's exhausted, and I wake up and I feel like I've genuinely been hit by a truck. And I don't think we talk a lot about mental health, and like, oh yeah, depression and anxiety and mental health might just be like lying in bed. But with relative energy deficiency in sport, you look like you're coping. Like the high output is still there. You're getting up, you're doing your work, you're probably doing it very well. And I was actually speaking to my mum the other day and I was saying, genuinely, relative energy deficiency in sport made me achieve so much. And that sounds really warped, but I genuinely don't think if I'd have relative energy deficiency in sport, I would have done half the times I did or won half the races, achieved half of the grades, achieved, it's all around like this achievement. And it's funny because the more you achieve, the more you want to achieve, and it's all wrapped up in that identity. And it's funny because you can achieve so many things and in the end, you're achieving them, but you're not actually processing them. I mean, because I can very much overwork to the amount that I can overtrain, and it's just that same cycle of output. You start to take the output and you start to take the external validation because internally, you're pretty spent, and the only way to get then, and internally you're not happy with yourself. Realistically, relative energy deficiency in sport, a lot of it comes from that need to have that external control because the internal feels so chaotic and feels so lost. I think there was a massive amount for me of identity loss and figuring myself out. I felt, especially when I had so many of my injuries, it literally feels like grieving. You have another injury and you're thinking, okay, first of all, again, it could be something like I tripped over a curb and now I've got like a ligament strain, and you're thinking this wouldn't happen to anyone else. But then you're also thinking this life that I've built for myself, it looks externally very good. I do appear like I'm really doing well, and I am doing well in my work if you look at it from just a output and achievement perspective. And that's, I think, the shift finally when you're really trying to recover is, okay, I might look like I'm externally coping, but would I rather live a life of real happiness and real fulfillment and not achieve those things? Because for me, I definitely reached that point where I was like, why can't I just live like a balanced, happy, healthy, sustainable existence? Why am I constantly living in a battle and a cycle of like peaks and troughs in my day? And it was finally just being like, because I have this high output, it means that my work turns into everything, which stops me from eating. And then the whole cycle just repeats itself. And then I don't fuel enough, but then I have this nervous, anxious energy, so I need to go and train. Then I train, I get injured, and the whole cycle starts again. And so it was reaching a point where like, okay, I can have these peaks and troughs of working really, really hard, but the troughs were never, okay, I'm gonna rest and relax and then go again. It was just, okay, the troughs happened because I got injured. And so it's noticing and realizing that I was running just constantly on empty and using that emptiness, which creates that nervous energy, that like, it's almost like a chaotic buzz to achieve what I could achieve. But eventually in the long run, it was just injuring me. I mean, in the short term, it was injuring me. And so really reckoning with relative energy deficiency in sport is having to detach your entire worth from output and achievement. That is the basis of it, really. And knowing that you can, of course, do great work, but you can just do it in a way that isn't so chaotic. Because when you're fueled and you're waking up and, you're prioritizing breakfast first instead of work, and you're taking that time to just like sit with yourself, not thinking I have to wake up at 5 a.m. and go and run to the gym and train, and then I have to run back, and then I have to run and have breakfast. Oh, but I just don't have time to eat now. So then I've got to run to school, and then I've got to run to work. Oh, and now it's the other training. So now I've got to go and train. Now I've got to spend time with family, and now I've got to see friends. And you get to the end of the day and you are spent because everything else has been prioritized before yourself, before food, before you've even connected with yourself in the day. And I think that was, and for me, I would do that. I'd just rush around. And I found that I'd actually end up getting to the end of the day and just thinking, I didn't get what I wanted to get done. I haven't been productive today. It's been a bad day. And every day turned into that. And it was because I was basing all of my worth on output, when really my output would have been, a lot more sustainable and a lot more fruitful if I had just woken up and, planned my day, had some food, sat down and had a coffee or a tea and a RED-Scue snack or a RED-Scue fueling jar, and that was the idea behind RED-Scue. It was just like providing that snack there. You wouldn't have the mental and emotional overwhelm, but it would remind you to be like, okay, well, I need to eat that first, or my day cannot start. I can't start my day already running on empty, already running on chaos. And so that's been really, really helpful for me. And the more reminders that I have there of the snacks and the food, just putting them out on the side, means that, and setting timers on my phone too, has meant that the timer goes off, I know I need to have a snack, and I need to step away from my work and fuel, because I was eating while working, and that was just tying food then. I was working to then earn the food instead of being like, okay, well, I can't get my work physically done properly and like without the fuel for my food to be able to work. And so it was all very like twisted. So that's really been the idea behind RED-Scue, and like that's what's helped the most for me. And another tip that's really helped is, one of my friends gave me this advice, and she said the bike, because I had this massive issue where like I couldn't even look at my running shoes or my bike or anything like that. And on the days where I'd have like rest days, I'd walk like 3-4 hours. Okay, maybe not that much, but I didn't count walking as exercise. Exercising had to be lifting weights or cycling a load of miles. It couldn't even be commuting. It would have to be a very intense run. And so it was also changing how I perceived exercise, because I was doing all of this exercise, again, on very minimal fuel. And yet if I'd go for a walk, it wouldn't count as the exercise that I defined it in my head. And it's really hard when you look at other people's lives and compare and think everyone else can do their very sustainable habits and, go to the gym maybe a couple times a week and they really feel like they're doing well, and I just don't. And if there's one thing I'm going to say is like, the comparison's the hardest part. It really is. Being like, everyone else is coping but me, but I really look like I'm coping. And it's that realization. And I think that, there's 3 A's. It's awareness, acknowledgement, and then action. And for me, that really helped, because it validated to me that the recognition and the awareness that I had would then turn into action. But it was taking that next step. And it was only by building RED-Scue and having those snacks there that I knew had the nutrients, knew had the carbs, knew that they weren't filled with loads of artificial rubbish, that they weren't going to hurt my gut, that I wasn't going to have all that mental overwhelm. Like, when I have a RED-Scue snack, I'm not stressed out for the rest of the day. And that was the issue with food, is like, I would eat and then I genuinely would go on ChatGPT and kind of type in everything I'd eaten, and it would calculate some rough tracker. And I think that's the difficult thing now. We constantly have ChatGPT at our fingertips. We have fitness trackers. People aren't even, we have Garmin's to tell us your sleep score and your energy levels. But I think ChatGPT has been probably the most dangerous part for me, because I didn't even realise, but I was using it for, meal plans and tracking, and instead of writing it all down in my notes app, I used to write it into ChatGPT. And ChatGPT, the issue with it is it will kind of tell you what you want to hear, and it doesn't have that critical analysis. So you could put something in and be like, yeah, make me a run workout, or create me some meals, or this is what I've eaten today, tell me how much I have eaten. And if you see that it's telling you that you've eaten more on the lower side, or, you know, all your training's higher than the average person, you get that buzz, you get that energy, you get that, oh, I'm doing really well, I'm working harder than the average person, or I'm running more than the average person, or oh, I'm eating less than other people. And there's no context. I mean, ChatGPT is making it up out of thin air, well, off Google and general analytics, but it doesn't know your life, it doesn't know your context. And I think for me, I found it really hard to know what normal was, like what a normal serving size was, what a normal portion was, because I'd spent so long eating with like mini spoons and out of mini bowls. And eating with a trusted person, or having someone that you can cook with, actually helped me, because I know that when I live alone, I tend to forget to eat, or food is less prioritized. Whereas like when you're actually making a meal together with someone, you're sitting down, and it's that active sensation of like sitting down to eat together. It's a bit like having the RED-Scue snacks or the RED-Scue fueling jars. It's like, okay, well, I know I have this, so I need to sit down and eat this. And I can share it with a friend, and it can be a starting point of discussing fuel and discussing what REDS is. And I think with food preparation, snacks are the hardest part, because obviously when you're thinking about dinners and food and planning, there's lots of things out there like what's it called, HelloFresh, and there's lots of kind of like food delivery services, or like prepackaged meals and things like that. But with snacks, it's really hard, because you need something that almost has like a protein, carb, fiber, nutrients, and it's really hard to find that. I mean, I found that definitely, and especially with the kind of like carb focus, because everything is very like keto, protein, especially high protein. I mean, I walked into Lidl the other day and it was just high protein everything. And we know that that has been going on for a very long time, and people are becoming aware of that, and probably quite skeptical of a lot of the protein trends that are going around, which is great. But I found snacks always the hardest part, because you'd have to buy like pretzels, yogurt, cottage cheese, frozen berries, just to make one snack. And I get that that's part of making like a bigger meal, but when you want a snack, you just want something very quick. And so that was the idea behind RED-Scue and how it's really helped me. Some other things I think that people don't talk about is that with relative energy deficiency in sport, it is around routine and stability too, or the chaos around what happens when there's instability. So for me, whenever holidays used to come up, that would really freak me out, because I couldn't have the same routine that I usually had, even if the routine was quite boring and actually wasn't very fun for me at all, because I was just working like 8 to 9 hours, not really resting for breakfast, lunch or dinner, training, running around, not really doing anything fun, because I'd be like, oh, training's my social time, like training's the fun part, when actually after a while, when you're training like 3 hours a day, it stops kind of being fun. You know, you think that you're going to training for the fun, but when you reflect on it, and when I reflect on it now, I think that can't have been fun. Like there was definitely like an hour in where it got fun, and then you're doing like 2 extra hours of exercise, and I just can't see where that enjoyment lies. But the funny thing about extreme exercise and overtraining is like you go out for a cycle, you know, that's maybe you've told yourself in your head you'll go for an hour, and you end up coming back after 3. And you say it's for the fun of it, but you're coming back absolutely exhausted. And it's that kind of dissonance. There's something called congruence and dissonance, and I had a lot of dissonance in REDS, because I was living this life that I told myself I loved, and it was actually making me very tired, very sad, meant that I couldn't prioritize work. I mean, I couldn't prioritize my school and my exams. And luckily, because of the high output mentality, I could keep up those grades, but they were definitely slipping because I just didn't have the mental capacity. I was too tired to really do anything that needed prioritizing. You end up not cleaning your house and not doing your washing, and things start to slowly kind of like fall away. And for me, it was also relationships that fell away. And when I started rebuilding and finally being able to have a bit more mental clarity, a lot of my relationships did fall apart because I suddenly had this strength and this power again. Because I'd spent so long trying to be smaller and smaller and smaller, and thinking that my worth was in my body and my worth was in my aesthetics and in my sport performance, that everything else like didn't really seem to matter. And it might come across as like quite selfish and egotistical, but it's not from that perspective at all. You're not trying to be a bad person. It just, because your priorities are all out of whack and your whole life is out of whack, you end up just not being able to prioritize the other people around you. And there's no shame in that, because you're actually struggling. Like, I was really struggling, and it was just seen as something like really shameful. Like, well, why? Like, why can't you just eat? Like, why are you causing everyone so much pain because you're not just like eating and training a normal amount? And, you know, it might help to call someone out and be like, oh, are you okay? Like, I'm noticing that like the behaviors and patterns aren't so normal. It's really good to point that out, because for me, my friends pointing out that things weren't normal and that I didn't look like I looked pretty knackered and tired and drained and grey, when I thought I looked the best that I did and was performing the best that I did. It's really good to point that out. And sometimes it does make the person go like, whoa, okay, actually something needs to change. Although, to be honest, for me, it was just getting like massive injuries. That was the final. I did have to hit rock bottom to then make my way back up. But it's also not blaming the person for the way that they're acting, because there's so many other things implicit in that, whether it's past experiences, trauma, external voices, narratives, cultural things. There's so many parts to it, and it's just kind of looking at it from a context point of view and being like, I see you're struggling, but I also see the context that you're in, and I might not know all of it, but you know, what you're doing might not, well, is harming you, and like, what can I do to help? And a lot of the time it might just be, you know, that you sit and listen. That's helped me. But just like not questioning, because when it's like, well, why can't you be a certain way, it makes you feel so shameful, and to be ashamed isn't going to get that person out of that red cycle. It's the acceptance and the seeing, being really seen and being like, okay, I see you, and we're going to get through this. And, you know, these habits can be changed. Of course they can, because you're so strong. I mean, look at what you've been able to do running on low energy. You can certainly live a life full of so much fullness and happiness, with, you know, fully fueled. So I don't think I went completely off topic on this video, but those are some of the things that I think really help in RED's recovery. And I'll probably do more on the things that I used to do that were maybe didn't help me as much, and maybe that can help someone. But yeah, that's the full video for today.